Okay, so hey, well, it's me and you, Mo. It looks like
Well, me and you and Cyrus. I don't know if
and
anybody.
Cyrus, I'm so glad you could make it to today's meeting. I know that Oliver and Gordy both intended to be part of today's, but I also know that they um, uh, Gordy told me that he's got doctor's appointments this week too. And and then Oliver, I know, is running his legs off with a million different tasks too. So if they do jump on, great. If not, we're going to keep going. We are okay. Here's Oliver coming in right now.
All right.
Hey, Oliver. Hello. Okay, he's still connecting. Hello, Oliver. Hey, how you doing?
Sorry, good. I forgot all about it until I just opened my email.
No, that's fine, and I'm glad you were able to join. We actually just started right now.
Okay.
Mo and I had a little good, just phone conversation going, and I'm not sure about Gordy, and I wasn't sure about you, but we just started the recording, and we'll get rolling. So we're in chapter 12, and man, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of feeling like we're coming around the curve and we can see the finish line down the way. 12, 14, 15. This chapter was really, really good, wasn't it, guys? Did you enjoy it?
I read it a few weeks ago and I gotta remember what was in it.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and kind of start it, and I'm sure you guys have some stuff you can pick out to share too. But one of the things that I thought was so good was the comment, because he's talking about the 6 different groups and how they're part of navigating change and how crucial they all 6 are. But the one statement that just stands out to me so strong is when he was talking about the dissenters, and he said, give a voice to your dissenters and remember that the mission trumps everything. And I just thought, man, that is great advice. I guess we've kind of tried to always operate that way, not really, maybe not knowing, we just give a voice to the ones who have disagreement with you, and welcome everyone to the table and be gracious about it. And one of the comments that I've kind of tucked in my back pocket is if someone has a real strong different opinion, to just say, hey, thanks for your opinion. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I appreciate so much that you did it, and it is duly noted, and we will, we'll really take that to heart. And but the point that he brought out about it was that if someone has a strong different opinion, if they have the chance to share, just to share what's on their heart, that alone is a big deal. And if they really feel like they've been heard, then ultimately there's no fear or worry in any of it, because ultimately you come back to, hey, we've all got our opinions, but the vision, the mission trumps everything, and we have to stay on target with our mission. And so, I thought that was golden advice. Of course, too, I loved the part about the church and the wheelchair, and Hal is blind and Gus is an amputee. And picture of those guys going to church. Hal can't see, but
good.
he can.
That's awesome.
Gus can't walk, but he can navigate and tell him which way to turn left, turn right. What an amazing, you guys are going to hear that in a sermon. You'll probably use it before I get to, I know, but that was just too good, too good. Anything you guys want to share that touched you?
Yeah, I mean, that story you hit on there was so beautiful. It reminded me of some of the people that attended Dad's church, you remember we had some of the people that would come from the halfway house, and they would help each other. They wasn't in the wheelchair, so to speak.
Right, right.
They would help each other up and down the aisles and stuff like that. And but it also reminded me of a great message. I believe it was Rick Dubose
Uh-huh.
preached one time, and he preached about that we are all pieces of the puzzle, and that we some of us have protrusions and others have intrusions. And he said, some of us have strengths in areas, and yet we have weaknesses in areas, and we come together and make the body of Christ. And I just think that's a beautiful thought. So that illustration reminded me of that whole story. But yeah, we have to pull together, and it takes all of us. And man, there was some great questions in here, like, why is it so difficult for the great ideal to become embedded in the culture of the institution, and stuff? Sometimes it's like pulling teeth, but it's like one step at a time, right? And
Yeah.
all put together. So anyways, that's what I got.
Mo, about intrusions and protrusions, and I wonder how many more protrusions I have or how I intrude on people. I mean, we all have our things, and it's,
Yeah.
it's really good advice. I remember those people at Dad's church that would,
Yeah.
I don't know, they were just unique, and they would help one another along, and
Sure.
the whole congregation kind of embraced them and helped them along too. And
Exactly. Yeah.
it was really special.
Mhm.
It's so true about you can, you can strategize and dream and get the big picture and the plan, and you pull it all together, come up with the catchphrase, you get the PowerPoint, you bring people on board, and you think, man, we're ready to charge. And then lo and behold, it just, the organization just sort of creeps along. And he talked about homeostasis, just we kind of, it's so hard to get everything in motion. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it goes away, does it?
Definitely.
How about you? Anything you want to underscore in the book?
I like both those stories. Well, what you talked about and what Mo talked about. To piggyback on what Mo was saying, I noticed in ministry and in life that those that are hurting, they have nothing or not much to offer, are the ones that give the most. Like like in my working place that I used to work, those that came from, let's say, a area of addiction, they were always there to help out somebody else with addiction. Like they were a family closer than their own family. And there's a camaraderie there. And when I read that about the blind man and the man that couldn't walk, I saw that camaraderie, helping each other. And if everyone in the church could do that, wow.
Come on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so true. If we all could catch hold of that, because that is the picture of the body of Christ. That's what it's all about. This chapter 2 was sort of a wake-up call to me, a strong reminder that remember way back at the beginning of this book and the beginning of this whole process, he defined the leader is the one that's not pointing the finger at anyone. That one really stood out to me. And as leaders, as we're, because the things that we're talking about are really important to people, transformative change and different types of, levels of implementing new ideas. That's hard for anybody, hard for any organization. And so it's been going so smoothly that I just kind of feel like, man, surely at some point somebody's going to say, but wait a minute, and we're going to have discussions that are challenging and meaningful and deep and all of that. But the mission, it has to be clear, and the leaders have to be cool and calm and collected. And he talks in there about how if we can receive input from others, but do it in a calm way, um, and stay in that blue zone. It was a few chapters back. I was trying to remember which chapter, but if we stay in that blue zone, we don't get in that red zone, real, reactionary and hot tempered or any of those things. So anyway, I thought it was a great chapter. I was going to see, I thought I had one. Oh yeah, I just wanted to point out, it's on 65, and as I was reading this, I thought, my goodness, that's exactly what we've done without trying to. The two teams that are critical for transformation, actually, it comes under the heading, the groups that get to the moon, and he was talking about Kennedy and how he said, we're going to make it to the moon, and but he describes the maintaining mission group and the transformation team. And both of those are important. So he says the maintaining mission group, they're the ones that keep things rolling, keep it sort of normal, keep the status quo. On Lewis and Clark's Corps of Discovery, this would be the guys that keep the wagon rolling so that you can have some expeditionists out front of the trailhead trying to find a new route, to get over the top. And I think for our church too, part of the challenge is that we've been having this definitely, the Corps of Discovery, this is definitely transformation team, church name committee is meeting and talking. That's definitely transformation team. Church board is meeting and talking and saying, yeah, we can see it. We're behind this. We put our stamp on this. That's transformation. But in addition to all of that, still, you have people going in the hospital. You have people with urgent financial needs, some battling illness and disease. You're having Sunday service. You've got lessons to prepare for classes. I mean, the church keeps going. And if it were not for a really beautiful, strong, level-headed group of people that give their blessing to, hey, you guys go ahead and dream and go out there and look and see what we can find, and just keep things maintaining while we're doing that. If it wasn't for the overall body, then we wouldn't be able to do this at all. And it reaffirms to me how blessed we are, to have people that sort of give us extra leash on the rope. And we're really blessed that way. But yeah, maintaining mission and transforming all at the same time.
No, that's so important, Pastor. I remember when we were first starting this, it was right in the middle of COVID. And I thought to myself, how is this going to be accomplished? Some churches aren't even open, when we started talking about it. And I read something online the other day, and it just made sense. Those that were born in 1900, did you folks read this by any chance?
I did.
Those that were born in 1900, they experienced the Spanish flu.
Mm-hmm.
They experienced World War I. They experienced the Great Depression. They experienced World War II. They experienced the Korean War. And if they lived long enough, some of them experienced the Vietnam War. Yet in all that time, the church kept going forward. At any one of those junctures, if the church would have said, hey, the world's too chaotic right now, let's just maintain what we have,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't have churches today.
It reminds me a lot of that. Chapter 8 and chapter 7, Stephen is persecuted. Chapter 8, they start getting driven out of Jerusalem. And a lot of people would think, hey, let's hunker down. It's time to just forget about expansion. Let's just try to preserve what we have and keep it intact. But God's church has always been resilient that way. And as we're being forced out of our Jerusalem into new territories, they're just taking the planet by storm. And I think it's easy for us to look back in retrospect and say, that was such a great missional church, but for us, definitely. We're definitely post-COVID times, and we're definitely, we can relate to that. So Gordy, as you can see, is connecting, and I'm glad he gets to make it. I wasn't sure if he would get to make it at all, but finally we got the Core of Discovery team all together. Welcome, Gordy. We're so glad that you get to be here, brother.
Hey, Gordon.
Sorry, I'm late.
Not at all. Listen, we're going to keep moving on because we kind of started the recording a little bit late. And all that we missed, all that you missed, Gordy, is we went over chapter 12 together.
Okay.
And I'm sure you could add great insights to it. But definitely watch it later on if you get the chance.
Okay.
But I want to share the screen with you guys and talk about this article that I read. It's called 4 Different Ways to Measure Success. And Carrie New, is it pronounced Newolf? I don't honestly know. I know that I respect a lot of things that I see by, I think it's, maybe it's Newolf. But it's talking about this fall is significant for leaders in local churches because it represents the launch season of annual rhythm. This year, as you inch your way out of the pandemic, the fall kickoff season has ministry leaders excited, anxious, and a bit puzzled about churches as they seek to rebuild momentum in their communities. The rush back has been underwhelming for many leaders. That's exactly what we just talked about.
Mhm.
Momentum is measured by numbers. Often we use metrics, key performance indicators. As you relaunch ministries in a season that for many feels like we're replanting our churches, those metrics will invariably get even closer attention than usual. The question is, as local church leaders, what are you measuring? And what do the things you measure say about what it is you're actually building? How do you measure success in the body of Christ? So it's just a good article. Of course, I'll post it on the website under Core of Discovery as one of our resources. You guys can read it later on your own, but it talks about old metrics versus new metrics and how to really define them. But 4 different critical numbers that Carrie Newolf follows. These are critical numbers. Number 1, our budget pie. Rather than fixing on the amount of money coming in, we now focus on the percentages of funds we invest into our surrounding society in compassion and justice activity. Before moving our church, there were literally $0 stewarded to share Christ's love in practical ways. I'm not sure how they define that, but probably I interpret that to say, hey, we gave money to missions and we supported ministries around the world, but we didn't really give financial support to locally investing in just showing the love of Christ in very practical ways. But he says this year, 70% of the money we're spending is invested in fostering compassion and justice in our communities, both locally and globally. Now, admittedly, we may not use the exact terminology or the exact same goals, but it's interesting conversation. Number 2, engagement rates. Possibly even more critical than money is people's time. So we also seek to measure how many of our weekend service attenders are actively participating in the way of Jesus, as opposed to simply living out a churchgoer kind of faith. To do that, we have more critical KPIs than our attendance rates. The most important of these is what we call our engagement rate. which takes the percentage of our attenders involved in one of our locations' anchor causes, and I'm assuming that's one of their core values, where more people would access the front door of our church through the anchor cause before even attending a weekend event. I think what he's getting into there is that in church, we often measure how many are saved, how many are baptized in the Holy Spirit, how many are baptized in water. You know, we measure how many come for attendance, but how often do we, and how good are we at measuring, hey, did you have any conversations with people about Jesus this week? And could we, I mean, shouldn't that be something that we really measure, maybe even more than the end result, you know, but are we, all of us, are we having conversations about Jesus with people? Number 3 was integration rates. You're seeking to foster what we call a friendship that makes a difference through fostering reciprocal relationships with the marginalized people we're serving. At the church, then, we're not just looking to directionally serve people in need, but to create mutuality as we explore, experience, and express Christ's love together. So kind of the inverse metric to engagement rates, we want to know how many people that we've served, like our friends who've experienced homelessness, have been welcomed, included, and integrated into our core programs. Now, I don't know how, man, I'd be interested how they really measure that, but that's really interesting. It sounds like kind of the book of James, you know, you say to the rich man, hey, we can right up here in the front, but then some poor person comes in and we say, yeah, sit over there in the corner in the back. Try not to mess up the program too much, you know. But this is saying we want everyone to get in and feel a part and be welcomed. And then the fourth one, and by the way, I'll ask you guys to chime in on just some of your thoughts here in just a minute. Community feedback. You'll never really know if your surrounding society would notice if you disappear unless you ask them. For instance, I wonder if people drive by our church and if they, you know, what do they think? Like, do they look at the building and go, I wonder what they do inside there? I mean, a really strong question to ask ourselves is, if our church closed its doors today, would anyone notice tomorrow?
Great question.
And so anyway, the 4 different areas, again, just briefly, our budget's high. How do we spend our money? Our engagement rates, who are we talking to? Number 3, engagement rates. How good are we at getting them integrated into the church? And then the community feedback. Does anyone really notice? You guys, what are your thoughts about that? Does it spark any questions or comments from you?
It challenges me, Keith. My heart is, boy, I tell you, my heart is burdened for our community. Because I see how lost our community really is, you know, and I do know that people do see our church. I know they see it because every time I tell someone about the church, they're like, oh yeah, I know where that is. And then, you know, a couple weeks ago when I did the memorial service, one of the comments that was made, and I remember it, the comment was, I never knew, let's see if I can say it right, I never knew that it would be so beautiful on the inside, was kind of one of the comments that came out of that. And so that stuck with me. I was like, wow, that's cool.
Oh, that really says a lot, doesn't it? You know,
praise God. Yeah.
one
but
thing, like Stephanie, it has been a big burden of hers ever since we've lived here. We've got to make the landscaping nice and the outside of our building. It needs to look pretty. And because we have no curb appeal, and that confirms it. That really,
well, and I didn't mean that as a negative on the outside, but
sure, sure.
I think they were just astounded that it looked so nice on the inside, because I know that we've done a lot of work, on the inside recently,
Yeah.
and so that wasn't a knock on the outside, but anyways, and then the other thing is yesterday, I was out, but out of church, but I went to get a COVID shot or a COVID test at 11 a.m. and I was so shocked at how busy how busy it was on Sunday morning. I'm thinking, aren't some of y'all going to church? And it was as busy on Sunday morning as it is on Saturday.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, man, no wonder our nation's lost. But
Yeah.
that's another time for another conversation. So I'll just be quiet with that. But
All of that is great input. What else?
yeah,
What do you guys think?
What you mentioned was so powerful. The other in your sermon Sunday morning, you talked about George Bailey,
Oh,
and when he was on the bridge with Clarence the Angel, and you mentioned something just now. If our church was gone tomorrow, would we be missed? And that was the story of George Bailey.
Right.
If I was gone tomorrow, would I be missed?
mm,
And in a
good.
sense, our church is that it's a wonderful life story.
Mm,
And we can get to the point where we can say, are we really relevant? Not just relevant and do we move with the times, but are we impacting our community?
amen.
And that has got to be first and foremost. And what you said just was like a laser in my heart. Are we that church that will be missed? And
Yes.
we got to be that church.
Amen.
Oh man, I want to live again. I want to live again for both you guys as you talk. Mo, just your compassion for our community. By the way, very interesting things have just been happening. You guys know that we're targeting Verrado, and the family that Mo's referring to is a family that lives in Verrado and experienced a death, and they
Wow.
place to have the funeral, and they had it at our building. And then, I was sharing last night with our lead team. We went to visit Zach in prison on Saturday. There is a man named Eduardo. He's getting out of prison, and he lives in Verrado. And I invited him. I said it would be the perfect church for you and your. It's a beautiful family, really sharp family, and get into all the details, but it was just as always just some poor choices. And but man, he said I would love to go to a church like that, especially starting out in a home that's really attractive to me. I'm a little intimidated about what it's going to be like to be back in a big building at a big church or something. But I do think God's doing things. And Gordy, I want to give you a chance too, but just our budget pie, how do we spend our money? How do we engage people? How do they get integrated? What would the community think? Does it spark any thoughts for you, Gordon?
Well, I've thought about I've been thinking about the homeless people, and those that are really having a hard time economically and socioeconomic situation, and how we can reach out to them. And I know that we're welcoming. We're welcoming to them, because there's several in our church that have come from that type of situation. And I just when you mentioned about James, about the poor person, sit here, or don't mess up the church, don't mess up our routine, our service, and
Right.
to the wealthy man here, sit here in front. So I think we got a pretty good handle on that. But I would like to see more of more of an outreach, and
Uh-huh.
the things that Carrie has talked about,
Yeah, same here. We've got several of our people that really have become involved with urban outreach, ministry,
yeah,
homeless, and we've done some of it on our own. But it may or may not be surprising to you, but there's a lot of homeless people around in our community, and I think that's going to be even more the case because of the climate financially,
yeah.
the economy and all of that. But
Mhm.
What I'd like to see is, although we're going to have a separate campus, like we've always said, we're one church. If both campuses could get together and reach the homeless or do an outreach, because for one campus to take that on by itself, it's going to be kind of tough. But if both of us campuses, or all 3 or 4 or 5 in the future, got together, we could really impact this community.
It
Amen.
takes a lot of resources.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that really kind of touches base on a nice transition to another thing that I wanted to talk about. And thanks for that sort of lead in there, Oliver. But I want us to dream together and just strategize for a few minutes about how we can make sure that that both campuses stay really connected. Like, what are some things we can do to make everyone really feel connected? I know that one of the comments from the book is so true, and it's like one of those really, it's highlighted, it stands out in the book to me, that people don't resist change per se, but they're experiencing loss, and we have to minimize their experience of loss. And so what are some things we can do? One thing, we plan to have a joint worship service once a quarter. And I'm picturing, Mo, you and I really haven't talked to this, but I'm picturing exactly what we did with the project worship. And maybe it's not that sophisticated or that, because that was just a perfect, like it was all carefully thought out, the strategy and all the different teams involved. So maybe that's way too advanced. But a night of worship, where we all just come together and we yet again say, oh man, look, there's Oliver and there's so and so and there, or what have you, and we all get to just be together. For sure, that's a huge thing. That's one of the things we've said. We've also said familiar faces of a teaching team of pastors that are rotating.
That's great.
Those are things that are going to keep some connection happening.
Yeah.
Mo and I still need to really strategize. I've from day one said, Pastor Mo's responsibilities increased because of the oversight of both worship teams, and teams might be defined loosely because it may be very small building as we go, but I can see, would it be awesome if we get to the point where, if we're able to have the same computer operating system, the same lighting operating system, the same soundboard operating system, and if we're able to use Planning Center to schedule people, there's Verado campus, there's Buckeye campus, different musicians, for instance, being used at different places.
Mhm.
We need you to be operating the live stream at this location on this day, or things like that, sound or whatever. I think that's ways that we can build community too. I would love to hear any ideas you guys have about how we can keep a sense of community.
I got a quick one.
Go ahead.
Let's have once a quarter, if we can, let's eat together. Let's break
Yeah.
together. Let's eat. Let's just fellowship together,
You know what? Last night I made this comment. It was just so fun. We were sitting around having chili and eating some ice cream and just being together. And we got a fire pit. And by the way, Oliver, you helped out so much, because I'm not a Royal Ranger. It took Pete and Oliver and Daryl, those three improvised a fire pit because my fire pit, I didn't take care of it, and the bottom of it rusted out. So we had to put concrete around and get the fire going. But that, we last night, it may have been you, Oliver, I can't remember, but somebody said this is the core of discovery right here, just sitting around the campfire,
It
just
was great.
one another, and there's something about food. That's exactly right, Mo. Once a quarter. That might really be a way to give people a chance to find purpose in organizing such an event too. Like we've got people that would love to say, to be the one organizing who brings food and all of that. So great idea. What else?
And when I was in Germany, we had a hub church in Nuremberg. That was the district church, and there were 6 churches around it, kind of like a wagon wheel. And we would, once every 6 weeks, we would have an old-fashioned sing rally, a worship time. We'd all come together. Man, talk about everybody looking forward to that, because you knew everybody from all the congregations. You really did. And man, we would just have so much fun and get to meet people again, and we would eat too at the same time and have worship. It was we would go over there like at 5 and be done at 11 or 10 or something. It was great. Yeah.
Fantastic idea, Gordy. It occurs to me, times change and there's different ways of doing things, but some stay the same, and you just do them in different ways. Like for Mo and I, he'll remember this when we were growing up. Used to be CAs, Christ Ambassadors was the name of your group, and there were CA rallies, and it would be from all of the section churches, and all the youth groups would meet together from each of the different churches, and you really wanted to win that Christ Ambassadors banner. If you brought the most guests, if you gave the most money, it was just like a hyped up, rally. It involved worship. At that, it didn't involve food, but we did this other thing. You'll remember the fellowship meeting was they would have dinner on the grounds. I never understood.
Oh, come on. Yeah.
Dinner off the ground? What are you talking about?
Dinner on the grounds. Yep.
It was that same concept.
We're dating ourselves now.
Oh yeah.
Hey, Keith, real quick, this is dreaming down the line, but if you get the 5-6 churches going, then you have a huge women's conference, you have a huge men's conference, you have a huge youth rally conference or whatever, just in the 5 or 6 churches, so that's another way that we could all come together. So
I totally agree, and I love the foresight of that. Until we get to that point, what I think is going to be critical, and I've already kind of put it on the calendar for next year for women's retreat and men's retreat, that can't you just see that would be awesome to pull both groups of men, both groups of women together. Maybe I'm hoping people meet new faces and go, oh man, we're part of the same church, but we haven't really had the chance to hang out. Well, guess what? We got about 48 hours together. We're just going to do all kinds of fun stuff at the retreat. And yeah, I am with you, Mo. That is awesome. What else? Keep dreaming, guys.
One thing is as pastors, when we go to conference, we see other pastors and we go, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. And like Mo was saying, that is so true for these congregations. If we can get them to realize the one church, just in 2 different places, they would look forward to that. That would be, remember Choco when he came and said, you need one of those events every so often? This could be one of those events that brings people together.
Oh, yeah. So Choco, was it 17 years? I think he pastored the one church in Chicago. Maybe that's not right, but he said that ever so often, systematically, routinely, it seemed like it was at least 5 times a year, he would shock the church. And it was sort of, you pictured like pulling out the paddles and like trying to resuscitate the church. And it was something unusual, something that required vision, something that would stretch them. Maybe it was an impact on the community, something that nobody else thought of. That's really good, things like that. Hey, I don't know how many seconds we have. We're almost out of time, okay? But I appreciate you guys so very much.
God
And
bless.
just if I can squeeze it in here, the board voted yes in the last meeting. The lead team last night, we didn't do an official vote, but there was an overwhelming, very good feeling about it and lots of good discussion. So if we can get all of our ducks in a row, we'll have a meeting this Sunday with a vote. And so be praying, you guys. We're believing for God to really just order something really beautiful. Love you all. God bless you.
Last question. Am I always this red on the screen?
No, I'm the one
Seems
that's
like I'm red. It seems like I'm always red.